everyone, my name is Tamika and I'm an accredited exercise physiologist here at True North Wellness. Today I want to go through a little bit of pelvic floor activation with you today and understanding how the pelvic floor links in with the rest of our body. We've got our little pelvic floor model here, so I just want to go through and remind you of what the pelvic floor is and kind of where it sits. So if this is our pelvis here, and we were to take out our pelvic organs such as our uterus, our bladder, and our rectum, then what we would have is this big empty bowl inside here. And you can see this is our pelvic floor muscles. There's a lot of different muscles that make up this kind of hammock, like I suppose you could call it in here, but the names of the individual muscles aren't important. I just want you to think about this big surface area that we have here. So our pelvic floor actually attaches right on our pubic bone at the front here, right to our bottom of our sacrum at the back, and then it extends beyond these two sit bones that we have sitting either side. So if you just do a little think, if you're sitting in your chair with your feet planted firmly on the ground, think about pubic bone at the front, sacrum at the back, and then think about those two big sit bones and kind of visualize that space, because that's going to be very important in a moment when we practice a bit of activation. Now it's also interesting to note that we have this big kind of deep pelvic floor, which controls a little bit more around that back passage. But then we also have our more superficial pelvic floor, which you'll see on the outside here, and that actually controls more through our front passage as well. And they can feel a little bit different to activate them, but we'll go into detail on that in a moment. I also want to think about how pelvic floor links in with the rest of our body. So if we've got pelvic floor sitting down the bottom here, one of its key roles is managing our intra-abdominal pressure. So that means that when we're breathing, when we do things like cough, sneeze, we pick up something heavy, all of those things, we need to be able to effectively control that intra-abdominal pressure. So if we think of our body as a big tin can, we've got pelvic floor sitting at the bottom of that tin can. We have our diaphragm sitting at the top, and then around the sides our core and back muscles, okay? And all of this together essentially is our core, what we call the core four, okay? So when we breathe, our diaphragm sort of expands down, and so does pelvic floor. So pelvic floor and our diaphragm actually work together to help keep the pressure inside this can nice and even. If we try to, if we cough or something and we're holding our breath and we're bearing down, we end up bearing down on the pelvic floor and essentially squishing this can, if that makes sense as well. Really, you don't need to get too worried about that, but just knowing that being able to effectively do our diaphragmatic breathing, which means that as we breathe in, that air is filling right to the bottom of the lungs, we get that expansion out through the belly, and as that diaphragm expands, and then we relax it in. So we're gonna practice a little bit of our belly breathing to start off with today. So you can put one hand up on your chest and the other one down on your belly, and I just want you to just breathe how you are and pay attention to where you can feel that breath. Is it this top hand that's kind of rising and falling, or are we getting that air right to the bottom of the lungs? And as we breathe in, can we feel that belly expand out and then relax as we breathe out? Once you've taken note of that, I want you to try and really focus on this belly breath, that part of the movement. So you can even bring both hands down to the bottom of the ribs and think about feeling that expansion out and that relaxation in. So just take a moment to do that now. That diaphragmatic breathing can be a little bit of a skill if it's something that you're not used to. So it's actually going to be the first part of us training the system. So spending a bit of time, might be a minute or two, where you're actually going through that and practicing that movement there, okay? Then this links us back to our pelvic floor, so effectively getting the bottom of that tin can working well, okay? So going back to what we said a moment ago, just visualize where that is. And I want you to get a little bit of activation. I want you to think about, imagine yourself stopping yourself from passing wind. So you get a little lift up, and then imagine you stopping yourself from passing urine. And you'll feel when we stop, we kind of get those two different areas, okay? Stopping ourselves from passing wind will target more in this deep pelvic floor, and then obviously the urine would be in that more superficial pelvic floor. But essentially we want to just engage them both together, okay? So if we think about lifting up, stopping yourself from passing wind, stopping yourself from passing urine, and then completely relaxing down from there. And that relaxation is a really important factor because we want to get full length, full lengthening, full relaxation, and full contraction through this muscle, okay? If we're just sitting, with a little bit of tension in it all the time, it's not going to work as effectively either. Now, to help with this whole system, what we're going to do is think about our pelvic floor as an elevator. So at the moment, we're sitting at ground level. When we do that little lift up, we're actually going to bring that up to level 1 of the elevator. And then when we relax, we're coming down to ground level. And then we're really concentrating on coming right down to the basement with that relaxation. And when I say coming right down, it doesn't mean we're bearing down. It just means we're achieving a really full relaxation through that muscle, okay? So let's put all this together. So we're going to think here, going to lift up. So we're stopping ourselves from passing wind. We're stopping ourselves from passing urine. We're lifting that elevator up to level 1. And then we're relaxing back down to ground level and just taking a moment to get that full relaxation down into the basement. And we're going to go again. So we're going to lift up through ground level. We're going to lift up to level 1, stopping ourselves passing wind, stopping ourselves passing urine. Then we're completely relaxing and then really letting that come back down into the basement there as well. Now, when we're doing these exercises, we shouldn't see any legs tensing or butt muscles tensing or anything. We really just want to try and isolate that pelvic floor. You might actually feel it a little bit in these, these deep abdominal muscles, and that's completely fine because they need to work together as well, okay? But we're just going to have a little practice with that. So let's do this elevator one more time. So we're sitting at ground level. We're going to stop ourselves passing wind, stop ourselves passing urine. We're lifting up to level 1. Then we're relaxing down. And then we're going down to that basement level. And again, we're getting that little lift up, stopping ourselves passing wind, stopping passing urine, coming up to level 1. And then we're relaxing down into that basement level there. So that's our pelvic floor activation. Now the tricky bit is putting them both together. So if we think about our diaphragmatic breathing, our belly breathing we just did, and that pelvic floor activation. Now, ideally, we actually engage our pelvic floor during the exhalation. So the reason being, if we exhale, we get that bearing down of our diaphragm and pelvic floor. Pelvic floor should be nice and relaxed when we're breathing in. When we breathe out, we get that little contraction up through pelvic floor. Then as we breathe in again, we get that relaxation. So we're going to practice putting that together, okay? You might find having your hands on your belly is helpful when you're doing this, but you certainly don't have to. Let's just get that belly breathing going first. So we're going to breathe in, we let that belly expand out, and then we're breathing out. Next breath in, we're really letting belly expand out, and breathing out. Now what we're going to do is tie pelvic floor. So we're on our next inhalation, we're breathing in, we're letting belly expand out. As we breathe out, let's try and lift that elevator up to level 1, and then relaxing as we're breathing in again. As we breathe out, we're again lifting that elevator up to level 1, relaxing it down to ground level as we're breathing in. So essentially, during an inhalation, we're feeling belly expand out and we're relaxing pelvic floor. As we breathe out, we're actually lifting up through pelvic floor and getting that little contraction. It's a really important skill to be able to try and tie that to your breath because, as we said before, it helps keep that intra-abdominal pressure under control. And this really links in when we're doing other types of exercise, which we'll touch on at a later date as well. So really give yourself a bit of a chance to practice that. We used to think with pelvic floor training that, doing a little bit here and a little bit there throughout the day was the most effective way, but really our pelvic floor is like any other muscle group. So if you can spend a few minutes a day where you're actually just really concentrating and zoning in on it rather than being distracted and doing other things, that's going to help you kind of optimize this system that we're talking about here. All right, I'd love to hear how you go. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.